Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. All members are present. Approval of the agenda. All of it in front of you. Is there any changes?
Just under the action items, we got 7G in the packet, but it's not on the agenda, the Stearns County prosecution contract.
Okay. You're right. Is there anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with that addition?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Shallon. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes, the June 16th, 2020 regular meeting. You received them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed on that set of minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 16th, 2021 regular meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane.
Second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Motion carries 4 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. We have the June 17th, 2021 special meeting. That is also in your packet. Do you have any questions or concerns about them? Otherwise, I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Considering the lengthy agenda we have tonight, we're going to limit the open forum to 20 minutes. Each person that wants to speak to the council will each have 3 minutes as normal protocol. We will not have any answers to any questions. This is strictly for your comments. And we will go from there. Make sure all your comments are directed toward the council, not to the audience. So, is there anyone that'd like to speak to the council? Oh.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Opeth. I live at 875 Lakeshore Drive, which is directly across from the old course, and 3 homes down from the proposed marina. In preparation for speaking tonight, I looked up the role of city council members on the internet. The first entrance said to represent the interests of their constituents. The second thought I saw was for a councilor to act as a representative, an informed and responsible decision maker in the interests of the community. In regard to the first point, I ask you if you feel by voting for this development to occur, you are voting for what the majority of your constituents want. Perhaps I shouldn't say majority. I have attended all but one of these meetings, and overwhelmingly, the people who have attended and spoke have been against the proposal. Can you say in your hearts that you have received more feedback either through email, conversations, or by attendance at public hearings wanting the proposal to pass? Who are you voting for? Where are the people who are for this development? Perhaps tonight they too will stand up and publicly share their thoughts. In regard to the second point, 2 counselors have approached me to discuss my opinion. I know that at least one of these individuals has approached others to gather information and opinions. How about the rest of you? I can only hope that you too have polled and tried to find out what people want. Otherwise, what are you basing your vote on? Does that signify that you are an informed member acting in the interests of your community? Like taxes, change is inevitable, but we need to make sure that a big change like this is for the benefit of all, not just a few. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is somebody in charge of volume? We can't hear that.
Just 1 second. Is there a volume control they can't hear out in the back? Okay. Oh, or maybe Brian's reaching it.
You can't hear her?
Oh. Hmm? Yeah. No.
Testing, can you hear me now? Okay. You can cut that part out of the video. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. My name is Rayanne Danielowski, 41033 Sauk Lake Road. I have sat in your position in my local community. I've served my community for 10 years, 4 as a council member and 6 as their mayor. I know how hard it is to look at these proposals and to make decisions based on them. As I read through all of the information in the packet, and I looked at the 16 bullet points that were being asked for in this ordinance change for the PUD, my question was, there should be a 17th, and that should be in the kitchen sink if I need it. I'm concerned that there's 400 feet of lakeshore that's unbuildable that goes attached to this property. And in that 400 feet, and I've heard 1,000, so I'm not 100% sure which one it is, but it looks to be 400 from the look of it. And to even consider 60 maximum slips for a marina in that area is way too much density on this lake. We've been on this lake for 17 years, watched it evolve into the beautiful lake that it's become. The weeds are gone. It's very much a recreational lake and a fishing lake, and it's gotten busier. There, on the bay that we're in on this end of the lake, that the amount of houses that have been just built, the amount of houses that have changed hands from older generations that have come and done remodeling and are using them like they weren't used before, and the amount of boats on the lake has changed tremendously. I question when the DNR study was, when they are talking about how they feel that this lake can handle that density. The 9 mile can probably, but we're not talking about the 9 miles of the lake. We're talking about this end of the lake that operates separately a lot of times from the other end of the lake. More people come down to do their recreational boating on our end of the lake because it's more conducive to it. It isn't as choppy, it's not as open as the straight area, and I just don't see where a 60 slip marina, I think I've talked to a lot of our neighbors, and they somewhat agree that maybe 10 to 12. No one of us would be able to own 400 feet of lakeshore and do this as homeowners. We have 110 feet. We can only have X amount on that 110 feet. You take 400 feet that this gentleman owns over there on unbuildable lakeshore, and the most he should be able to put on there is maybe 10 to 12. That would be common sense. And the density that's 60, would put on it, and I would hate to see you approve a PUD that would allow that to happen, because once you approve the PUD, you are telling him he can start to plan on this. I would like to see a cap at 10 to 12. I think that's more than enough. The amount of boats on the lake have increased, the amount of watercraft has increased. It was dangerous out there this last weekend. Has anybody talked to the sheriff and the water patrol to find out what's going on these days? People, you can't get a boat anywhere. You can't get a watercraft anywhere, a pontoon anywhere. They're all buying these, and not everybody has the skills to run them yet. So they're dangerous. I would hate to see more density on our lake.
Okay, 3 minutes is up,
Thank you, Lauren.
but
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So, hello, my name is Amy Jemai Kotke. I live at 867 Lakeshore Drive. I've spoken to you before, both at the Planning Commission, Mayor Stone, and then at the council meeting last month. I want to point out that myself and my neighbors who are sitting here have shown up every single month. From January to July, we have shown up. We have stood up. We have tried to make our opinions known. We have been presented you with multiple versions of our own experience on this area of the lake. We had other persons in our neighborhood who have moved to this area from Nisswa and elsewhere give their own personal experiences on how this type of uncontrolled development, and it is uncontrolled at this point. You're opening a PUD. I like the statement of the kitchen sink, because that is actually the truth. Everything in this is the kitchen, plus the kitchen sink. What you have not done is listen. I'm going to call you on the carpet and say you haven't listened. You haven't listened to the over 70 neighbors who consistently showed up for 7 months to tell you what we think about what's going to happen in our neighborhood. Mr. Click has shown up twice. The first time was at the Planning Commission meeting, which amazingly was the time it wasn't tabled again and was voted upon, and tonight. Because he hasn't had to. He's had your city administrator and your zoning planner do his own work. Your city administrator changed the ordinance from the time it was approved at the Planning Commission to tonight. And in her own words, at last meeting, it was at Mr. Click's bequest. Where is our staff member on the city, paid for by our tax dollars, who puts in what the neighborhood wants in that ordinance? Nowhere. Here's a quick little number version for you. Of my 6 neighbors here, who I know very specifically are here to oppose this ordinance, we pay collectively $27,612 in property taxes annually. Mr. Click, for his entire golf course, including his special assessments and the Outlot A, pays $16,590. It's a $9,000 difference for what I would say is we own probably about 1/4, if that, of his acreage. But yet, he has city staff doing his job, proposing a new development that's in opposition to the entire neighborhood around him. Bluntly, the neighborhood is not getting our money's worth. We have not been heard. You have staff advocating for private development, for-profit private development. This isn't low-income housing. This isn't tax credit income. This isn't anything that will assist the lower levels of our community. This isn't it. I ask you again, think about what you're being related to. This is our community. We live in this neighborhood. We show up every day. We are trying to make you understand what we are going to experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council? Oh, we got.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Jerry Schmidt, and I live at 863 Kate's Estates Drive. That's by the Indian Mound or across the street from number 2. And so don't tell the owner that I've hit a wedge or two across the street, or two from the yard. But just about 1 year ago, I moved back to Sauk Center after 61 years. My mom and dad, Jim and Lucille Schmidt, were here for their entire lifetime. And so I chose to come back after 61 years because I just love this place, loved growing up here. And most of all, I loved the golf course. I worked on the golf course. Recently, they published a book about the golf course, and it showed several paragraphs where I worked on the golf course, and the homeschool girls used to holler at me when I walked by the fairway. So, 3 minutes, I won't take more than 3 minutes. My wife said I've never been able to say anything in 3 minutes in my life. So we're living in a patio home across the street. I am overwhelmingly, and I know others are, in favor of the development and the rezoning request in front of you. And so the reason why is really simple. New housing options. And gosh, when I came here a year ago looking for housing options, I had all kinds of issues trying to find something, and I was just very fortunate to get one of the patio homes across the street from the golf course. So new housing options, lake access. You know, if I thought that I could have lake access when I moved here, that would have been something very attractive to me, and with passing this rezoning, that very well may be possible. What I like best is being a neighbor and living by the golf course is I know the golf course is going to be there. So there's going to be new housing options, but the golf course is not going away. That wonderful green space, that 64 acres that I fell in love with 61 years ago. So as an aside, I distributed a flyer, a folder yesterday talking about all the misconceptions and some of the misrepresentations that I've heard as it relates to the development. And it was very educational, but it was also nice to meet a bunch of my neighbors and some people I hadn't met for years. One of the neighbors even told me he used to fish next to my dad, and my dad would never tell him where the fish were. So anyway, I want to say publicly and thank Steve Klick and Aaron Feltman for what they've done in terms of maintaining. One of the things I was just amazed at when I came back was how well cared for and maintained that golf course was. And it's just for a 9-hole golf course. I've sat on golf boards. I understand the cost to do that. I want to publicly thank them for what they've done. Because every morning I get to sit on my back patio and look out over that beautiful 64-acre park.
Okay. Thank you.
Finally,
Sir, your 3 minutes is up.
I'm sorry.
You proved your wife wrong.
My wife was right.
You proved your wife wrong, so there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I didn't scold you either.
Mayor, City Council members, I'm Mitch Manosky, also called Skip. I live at 41037 Sauk Lake Road, and I'm able to have a very good view of the property that you're talking about, putting a 60-boat slip on. And I'm here to say that that particular property is located in such a fashion so that people that are closer to the dam that we have here, coming around that corner, will be causing a safety issue there. Those slips would come all the way out to the end of that point. And so that's a traffic issue. It's going to be a safety issue. It doesn't seem real because when you and I ride on a road, we've got 2 lanes. When you're on water, it looks like it's so immense. But people like to take the shortest path. And as habit will prevail, you're going to want to hug that little end of it, and it's going to cause safety issues. That's number 1. Number 2, 60 slips, in my opinion, is just way too many. I understand that a person would like to have water access. I really do.
Sure.
I have water access, and I'm real glad for it. But at the same time, when you multiply that and stack that up on top of each other, it just doesn't, it's not the same. And that's the part of it that I want you to understand from my perspective. The number, if the number was smaller, like someone suggested 12 or 15, that would probably work. But at 60, and you know, I understand that they don't happen all at once. I read what was in there. I respect that. However, we're not here to make short-range plans. You know that. What you decide has a much longer lifetime than your tenure in office. And what I'm asking you to think about that's 60. Whether they're used or not, it's 60. It's right there. They don't have to be used every day of the week, and I understand that it won't be. But on a holiday weekend, if just even one accident happens out there, it's just going to be so difficult to recover from that accident. And we can see this coming. That's where I'm at with it, okay? I can see it coming. Both ways. You know, we had a beautiful firework display at the north end of the lake. At night, there was a stream of boats coming back, you know, from that. I want you to know, everybody was looking out, but at that part of the lake, it does narrow a bit, okay? And you just have to be hypervigilant. If all I'm saying is even experienced boaters, you know, are going to be pressed to make sure that they're safe there. Protect us from those that are not experienced boaters and are under some form of intoxicant.
Okay, thank you.
Derek Kotke, 867 Lakeshore Drive. I'm all for progress, but doing it right. Plenty of people have covered boat traffic and that, but I want to talk about the failure to listen to the neighborhood. Only one city council member came out and talked to the neighborhood, to me and my family. I mentioned that there was another one out there, okay, but there's a lot of concerns that weren't addressed and aren't being addressed if we pass this tonight. You know, the parking along the road, the management of garbage, the management of cleaning fish, bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Things that could have been addressed at the planning commission level, putting up privacy barriers, privacy fence, berms, plants, shrubs, trees to hide the potential marina that's going to be there. But those things weren't done. So when will this be addressed? If this is passed? Create more statutes, more city code, creating more government, less fun. Tonight is a yes or no decision, but it can also be a compromise. Because yes, you either approve it or no, you don't. The compromise is not to approve this tonight and start over and address the concerns of the neighborhood, because most of the city council hasn't come and talked to the people. They've heard them here, but no one's come knocking on our doors except for one to hear what the neighborhood has to say. So I ask you to reject this and start over and do it right with the neighborhood concerns. Mr. Click, we asked him to have a neighborhood meeting. Didn't have one. Didn't care. So
You're cutting into his time, people.
we want to have a good neighbor. We want to be good neighbors. But this is starting off adversarial if we pass this tonight. Because Mr. Click didn't want to have that neighborhood meeting, and the Planning Commission didn't want to address the concerns that we have. So I ask that you reject, send it back, start over, and do things right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Mary Click. I live in Glenwood. I wanted to read this the last meeting, but I was unable to be here. I'm no stranger to Sauk Center. I grew up here. My father had a business and with my mom raised 6 kids. He belonged to many civic organizations and always supported growth and development in town. Because of what I learned growing up, I am beyond frustrated by the shenanigans displayed by the City Planning Commission in discussing the possible development of the old course. The short-sightedness and lack of vision displayed by the members is confusing at best. Steve bought the Sauk Center Country Club in 2013 as a favor to bail out a failing entity. Buried in the contract was a 10-year non-compete clause. He has spent over $3 million maintaining, rebuilding, revising, upgrading, and developing the course to make it the showpiece it is today. He endured the non-compete, as well as the damages caused by the city building the stormwater ponds that rendered several holes unplayable. He rebuilt a clubhouse that before stood with significant building code violations. He now would like to enhance the property by building twin homes, single-family residences, and/or apartments that would generate over $2 million of additional revenue for the city over 20 years. The 90 possible homes could open up 90 older homes for newer residents as well. Area residents have complained about any possible development. The not in my backyard attitude was very prevalent at the Planning Commission meeting that I attended. Residents repeated over and over that it was their right to walk around the course without road traffic. It was their right to have an unobstructed view of the beautiful course. It was their right to not have their neighborhood changed. I left the meeting thinking Sinclair Lewis was rolling over in its grave. The spirit of Main Street was very much still alive in Sauk Center. The neighbors surrounding the course don't want change. But how many of these neighbors have supported the course by playing a round of golf? How many have had a drink in the clubhouse or a sandwich on the patio? I can guarantee you very few, if any. What about the rights of the course owner? Does he not have the right to use his property as he sees fit? I see 4 alternatives here. The city can buy the course since the residents feel it's theirs and should exist for their enjoyment. The neighborhood opposition group pools their resources and buys it, fence the course and grow a cash crop like hemp or industrial violets, or allow Steve Click to develop the property responsibly within the guidelines set by the city. I truly believe this is a win-win situation. Desirable housing will help attract industry. This will in turn increase the tax base and revenues of the city. This should be a priority. The decision is yours. I implore you to open your minds, be visionary, and allow Sauk Center to grow and blossom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie Detterman, 851 Lakeshore Drive, and I'm here with my husband. We've talked every meeting. I'm not going to preach it again. I guess our biggest concern is we own over 500 feet of lakeshore. We border the 60-spot marina that he wants to put in. With that 500 feet, the bay is ours, so I'm not sure how he's going to fit that in. Our biggest concern is when we bought that place 12-ish years ago before our kids were born, we could swim, we could enjoy it. We can hardly get our kids out off past our dock because it's dangerous. In fact, it's so dangerous, we're now wondering, will we ever get our kids to swim out there? So we boat them and we go to a sandbar because the traffic there and the speedboats and the jet skis and everything is flying off. I mean, there's multiple times we can't get on or off our lift. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I believe Click, he owns that land. He has good intent. But there's a big picture up top, and there's so many unanswered questions that everybody's had. And a 60-boat marina is huge. Would you let us put 60-boat marina in? Because we own over more lakeshore than he does. And that's just a proven fact. I just wish you guys would really put yourselves in some of our shoes, too, you know? Put it as a whole. We're raising young families. Like I said, I spoke a lot of times. I don't need to go over all that again, so I just want to say thank you guys, and thanks for letting us step up here and give us a chance to talk and listening to us. And thank you to, like I said, one of the city council members that has come out and kind of heard good and bad, because that is a good thing. Sometimes we don't hear the good as the people on the other side, so thank you guys.
Thank you. I think we've reached our 20-minute limit, so thank you for the comments. We will now move on with our regular meeting. We do not have any public hearings, reports and presentations. City engineer report. Keith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The information center site is going very well. Hopefully you've got a chance to drive through there and see the progress. Most of the removals have been done. Unfortunately, most of the trees are down. There'll be new ones that will be planted with the development, but most of the trees are down. The building is down. The old parking lot and everything is gone. They're starting to put in the utilities. Utilities should be in by the end of next week. And then they'll start on the grading and the rest of the site preparation. So that is going pretty well and on schedule to be the first phase being done the end of July and the project by the end of August. The South Industrial Park project, we're moving forward with the plating and the preliminary design on that, and actually we'll probably be coming to you maybe next meeting or the meeting after with some preliminary plans for you to look at and go from there for that project. So that's moving forward, as well as the planning that'll happen as well on that project. Last year's 2021 project, Elm Lake Street, the final course of paving has been done on that project. Really the only things left are just to make sure that the seeding is taking and growing. It's been a tough year for that, as you know, but so we're working on that to make sure that it's up and growing appropriately before it gets closed out, and if there's any minor punch list items to get that taken care of. But that one's essentially nearly complete on that. The 2022 project, the feasibility report will be in your next meeting's packet, and we'll do a presentation to you on that at the next meeting, and then it'll be up to you, but I assume we'll schedule probably maybe a public informational meeting or at least a public hearing and move forward with that. So, but you'll see that at your next council packet. So, any questions you have for me?
Questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Park Board report. Vicki?
So the Park Board met in a rescheduled meeting on Tuesday, June 29th. They had a couple items on their agenda. They did receive the Public Works Department monthly report and the updated campground financial report for the year. They did discuss improvements needed for the Little Red Schoolhouse, and they are going to get together and figure out what it all needs. It needs some renovation work. They're discussing whether they should put a handicap ramp and that type of thing up there. They did discuss and are recommending that the Boy-Girl statue be preserved rather than reinstalled. They'll have a recommendation on that at a future meeting. They did receive a request from citizens to install pickleball courts in the city. And then they had some updates on some outstanding projects. Some of those projects include the Browns Park restroom, the Tower View Ballpark, the Challenge Park, the bench and tree donation policy, arena capital improvements, the campground shelter project, the camper cabins, and the arena mural. So they have quite a bit of things on their agenda that they're working on. One item they did have some discussion on, they discussed having off-site park board meetings at various parks, and they did withdraw that offer after they discussed it a little more. They do have no action for you on the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Questions or comments?
Were there any plans with the fountain to do anything with it afterwards, or?
For the fountain?
Yeah.
So what they discussed was that they are recommending that it be preserved. What that's going to look like yet they don't know. They'll have some more discussion on that, and also what replacement will be out there. We do have kind of a temporary fountain out there right now, so there is a fountain, and but they wanted to put a little more thought into it before they brought a recommendation.
I was just down there tonight with the book benches, and I didn't know if it would be, maybe we could talk to the Artify group, and maybe they would have some ideas too. Maybe engaging with them would be a good idea.
There's several options on the table.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Park Board went and discussed it, and basically that statue's 100 years old, and that thing is so deteriorated after all the chlorine water and everything over the years and weather that it cannot be restored again. So if we put that out and it gets destroyed by a hailstorm or anything, or vandalism, anything like that, then it's gone forever. So it's safe sitting right there in City Hall for right now until we go through the options and find out what's best. So
Just
that's
something I thought of while I was down there. I thought
no,
maybe that
that's
would be
fine.
Yeah.
So that's how we learn.
Thank you.
Okay. EDA report.
The EDA met today at noon. We actually had a quite lengthy meeting. I think it was very productive. They did receive the Sauk Center Chamber of Commerce report and the Sauk Center Opportunities report. Both of those boards have representation on our board. There are other items they have, which will be on your agenda later tonight, is they have a recommendation on a letter of intent, which is a term sheet for Lot 2 of the Aerosmith Plat 3, that is the middle lot at the old Interpretive Center, and also one on Lot 3, so that would be the southernmost lot, and so both of those term sheets will come before you. Many people have asked why they do not know who we're working with, and that is simply because we are under a confidentiality agreement. The EDA, the City Council, and the city staff are all under that confidentiality agreement. So it's not that we're trying to keep a secret, it's that we're bound by that agreement. The couple other things they talked about, of course, was the Information Center property timeline, which Keith gave you an update on earlier, and also on the industrial park. They did also talk about having an electronic billboard opportunity on I-94, some residential development that they're working on, and then a couple items that they have finalized would be the TIF District 1-14, which is in the industrial park, which has been certified and filed, as well as the SCDP grant and loan for Sprinkle of Joy. And so the two items that they have on your agenda, you'll be discussing in closed session at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. Other than that, they have no action items.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to action items. 7A, consider waiving 2 a.m. liquor fee for 2021 renewal.
So the state of Minnesota has waived its renewal fee for the 2 a.m. liquor license for 2021. The city of Sauk Center also charges a $200 fee for this renewal. It has been requested that the city consider waiving the 2 a.m. liquor fee renewal for 2021 as well. We have 4 establishments that have the license, so the fiscal impact to the city for waiving the fee would be $800. I believe the 4 establishments that have it are the 4 downtown bars. So the action requested is to consider the waiving the 2 a.m. liquor license renewal fee for 2021.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I guess my general thought is the bars open back up January 11th, I believe it was. They've been operational full time for the year. So I don't know that it's necessary to waive this fee personally.
I agree
I
with
thought-
Joe.
Okay. Comments? Basically, yeah, it could go either way. Does it look bad for the city not to waive it when the state waived it? When we're talking $800? I don't know.
I mean, we've
It's-
talked so much about, helping where we can, and I know that there has to be an end date to that, but if the state is continuing on, there's got to be some background reasoning besides, and, if bigger cities have more to lose because of this, we've got $800 on the table. I don't think it's a big deal to waive it up aside from the city, or aside from the state.
Okay. Do I have a motion to go either way, or what's the council like to do, or do you want more discussion?
I guess going along with the state, I can see Heidi's perspective. Going along with what the state is doing kind of seems appropriate.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we waive the 2 a.m. liquor license for the city for 2021.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Heidi. We have a second by Shellen. Is there any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3 in favor, 2 against. 7B, approve resolution 2021-58, lot split, Meyer to Malika.
So an application has been received from Roman Malika on behalf of John Meyer for a minor subdivision property. The Malika property is located at 242 Hendricks, with the Meyer property being a larger parcel which wraps around behind. I did provide you with a copy of the certificate of survey, which is attached. You would be purchasing, if you see on the certificate of survey, tracks A and B, which is both this action item and the following action item. Track B would be attached to the property directly to the south of it. Track A would be attached directly to the property there as well. So basically what he is doing is extending the depth of his property by 75 feet. And that is in front of you in resolution 2021-58, approving the minor subdivision.
Questions, concerns? We actually, I think, just did this for another property that's 2 houses down
You look
from
familiar.
this one here, so. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2021-58?
Motion to approve.
Motion by
second.
Diane, seconded by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7C, approve Resolution 2021-59, lot split, Meyer to Malika.
This is the very same, this is the lot right next door with the same request to add 75 feet to the back of his property off of the Meyer property. That is Resolution 2021-59, approving the minor subdivision.
Okay, any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the resolution 2021-59?
Motion to approve.
I'll
By
second.
Joe, second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7D, approve appointment of driver for ambulance department.
Kathy Strufert, the ambulance director, has requested that the city council appoint Ashley Nathy as an emergency medical responder/driver for the department. Nathy currently has an active EMR license and is taking classes to become an EMT. Strufert is requesting Nathy be appointed as a driver, until which time she will become eligible to serve as an EMT. So that is the request before you. Appoint Ashley Nathy as a driver for the ambulance department.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to appoint Ashley Nathy?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shallon, do I have a second? Heidi seconded it. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7E, Ordinance 803, amending zoning map, golf course.
So what you have in front of you is the zoning amendment that would grant a mixed-use PUD to the golf course. You do have the description and summary of the staff report that was presented at the last city council meeting. You also have the ordinance in your packet. This is the ordinance as presented by the planning commission with some requested changes, which are the ones in yellow that we had submitted earlier by Mr. Click. You have the option to approve the ordinance as presented, or you can amend it, or you may deny it. If you are going to approve, then I'd like you to address those items that are in yellow, because we want to make sure that we know whether we're going to accept those requested changes or not. Currently, this is on the table. So what we do need to do is to take a motion to take it off the table, and then to either motion to approve or deny or amend, and then you can have your discussion on it and then action on it following that. If you have any questions of me, you should ask them at this point, because once you get into your discussion, it's a little bit different rules happen, so.
Okay, so basically what we need, do you have, anybody have any questions of Vicky before?
So then just take it off the table and then move into your,
Otherwise, I'll be
Action
looking
and
for a
deliberation.
motion to remove it from the table with the option to either approve or deny it. And then we, after that is done, then we can discuss this. So if no one has any questions of Vicky right now, do I have a motion to remove this item from the table for either approval or denial?
I'll make the motion to remove it from the table for approval or denial.
Okay, we have a motion by Joe
I'll second.
and seconded by Heidi. And now with the motion and second, we can go into discussion. I'll let the council speak first.
Do we have to vote on the removing from the table?
We just, call the question, all those in favor speak. Sorry about that. Skipped a point. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me. One opposed.
You're opposed? Okay. 4 in favor, 1 against. Okay, we can now open it up to discussion. I'll let the council speak first. I've got some things that I'd like to comment on. So If you got anything, Heidi, or?
I do, and I have the uncanny ability to have my mouth move before my brain, so I actually wrote down something that I'd like to say, if the council would be willing to let me read it. So over the last several months, I've had the time to consider the many angles our residents and Mr. Click have come in at as it concerns the development of his property, which ultimately that's what it is, his. It has never been the city's property, nor do I feel it's the best interest of the city to make it theirs, despite many of the rumors circulating. At the first meeting last winter, the 20-year plan, as it was deemed, projected the possibility of this becoming much different than what is being discussed tonight. Over the ensuing months, with the help of feedback from the community and the work from the Planning Commission, Mr. Click's project scaled back to include less grandiose plans, but still plans that had the potential to disrupt the atmosphere of that neighborhood, particularly with regard to the marina, the scale of which Sauk Center has not seen even in the public sector. I'll be the first to admit that that's not what I could or wanted to envision for this space. But I'd never thought I'd see a public beach, a splash pad, a challenge park, or any of the other amenities brought to fruition in public spaces within our community, and they've all been welcomed. I had to look at this from an amenity standpoint, not public, but still an amenity. What value does this bring to the community as a whole? An opportunity for someone living in senior housing to own a dock and boat to bring their grandkids, or to own and dock a boat to bring the grandkids out fishing. Or maybe someone at that end of town without lake access to walk to take their boat out from a rented slip. Even someone further away in town. Because they don't have lakeshore frontage, they shouldn't have reasonable access to the lake except by means of driving to a landing and leaving their vehicle all day in a parking lot. Might sound reasonable to some, but is it unreasonable for someone to offer an alternative? I found myself on the side of the opposition in a moment that surprised even myself at the last vote. I sided with the loudest voices in the room. After those voices had their say, I then heard from the figurative, quiet voices in the back of the room, not wanting to say anything at all for fear of backlash and having felt the intimidation of those who spoke the loudest. But because of those quiet voices, I was grounded and given a broader perspective. Do I still fear this could become more than was intended? Sure. Do I recognize change is inevitable and believe in my heart that Mr. Click deserves more than to be told that what he can and cannot do with respect to his property, a property no one was willing to invest in at the time he purchased it? I do. I can't say what this will look like in 20 years, but I will give Mr. Click the benefit of the doubt and trust he will make decisions that keep the neighbors and community in mind. And that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Shellen, or Joe, or Diane, one of you three have anything you want to comment on? Otherwise, I will.
Well, one thing, I'm worried about all the traffic up there. I'm worried about the boat traffic on the lake. I'm worried about the driving traffic on the road. I'd like to ask just one question, just with a show of hands. How many here are against this? Uh-oh. How many are for it? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joe?
Well, over the past 3 weeks since we tabled this and had that discussion, heard the voices firsthand at that council meeting, certainly have taken the time to review the council packets, the planning and zoning packets, the comments, the emails in opposition, and for that we have received in the past few weeks. And so to say we're uninformed is not necessarily fair because we haven't come to you in your home directly to ask those questions. The comments have all been made and are pretty established from all those meetings that we have reviewed. I look at the questions that were posed. How is this beneficial for the community? We're looking at potentially bringing in townhomes onto this property for our retirees. These retirees who are looking to downsize, looking for a place to stay in this town. If we do not provide that housing option to them, they will leave with their resources in this, to benefit our business community, our community as a whole. Additionally, we look at the millennial generation who are becoming less and less open to a 30-year mortgage and owning homes. They're looking for that mobility, the options to move around. The apartment units could provide that for those folks who, they maybe we're going to move on 2-3 years. We're looking at the Unger property, developing for commercial. The city is going to be making a substantial investment in that area. We don't have housing. Why would businesses come to this town if we can't provide housing for their employees? Is there an impact to the neighbors? Absolutely. That's very understandable. I live next to a property that is the target for residential development, so there'll be significant amount of housing coming in that area. Should I be able to oppose that simply because it's going to impact my neighborhood, my joy, my quietness for myself and my children? Or do I need to represent the entire community, what is for the betterment of the community versus just the best of the neighborhood? We cannot create factions of this neighborhood has to say over this one says this, and sets the agenda. We are here to represent the entire community. That is my opinion.
Okay. Shallon, you have anything, or should I speak?
No,
It's up to
I've
you.
been wrestling with this one for, like you said, Joe, I've been wrestling with it for a long time too, and I share a lot of the feelings that everyone has been saying with the progress aspect of it, and I get that argument, and people have, said that if a community's not moving forward, it moves backwards or it dies, but I do think there's something to be said for the other side of that coin, for what makes a lot of the small towns in this area so wonderful is the community-ness and the togetherness of a community, and I think that's part of it too, which is why, I think there is some room for compromise in what's being proposed, potentially. I don't know, I guess I'm struggling. I think when you make, in my opinion, when you make changes to an area, government's role, at least in my opinion, is there to make sure to protect everyone involved, whether it is the business owner or the community members themselves, so that there are protections in place. So if it wouldn't be owned by Mr. Click or his family in the future, that somebody else wouldn't do anything that destroys the integrity of the neighborhood either, and keeps the interest of the community itself in mind as well. So I guess that's where my mind is at, is trying to figure out where are ways that we can address some of the concerns and still allow some of the development to happen as well. So that's kind of where I'm stuck at, and I've got a couple ideas and kind of wanting to see where we can go forward here and address some of those things, so.
Okay. Well, one of the things is I also serve on the planning commission. And just because we're not in a meeting doesn't mean we're not doing our homework and doing what we think would be the benefit for the city as a whole. Whether you're on the park board or the council or senior center board, you're on those boards for the benefit of the city as a whole. And yes, usually the loudest voice gets heard a little more, but in the last 3 days, I think every one of us have gotten more emails and phone calls from people in town that actually said, if you don't do this, you're holding up progress. One of the prime examples is that when Walmart came to town, nobody liked it. It was going to kill Sauk Center. We don't need him. Get him out of here. Well, there wasn't anything they could do because it was already zoned. And after they were here, the amount of tax base that was paid by Walmart helped the city not raise taxes for 8 years, just based on that tax base. Now, everybody, I bet half the town was against that one, but it happened anyway. And now if you told people that Walmart was going to close next week, we'd have 3 times as many in here trying to prevent it, telling us we better start doing our jobs because we can't afford to lose that business. because it's going to affect your back pocket. So basically what we're doing is representing the whole community. The Planning Commission spent a lot of time going through this thing line item by line item. Yes, their requests were put on here to change it after the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to approve it with stipulations. And there's a lot of things that, yeah, they might not have been addressed, but when the zoning, which is basically what this is all about, is done, if it's approved or not, every request for everything that Mr. Click wants to do has to come to the Planning Commission to be reviewed again, and then that's when your conditional use permits and all the regulations and traffic controls and stuff like that. The lake, we can't do anything about. The DNR is the one that controls that lake. The only thing we could do is we could say instead of 60 slips, which was a DNR recommendation, we could reduce it to 20. That's the only thing we could do. Basically, on boat traffic and anything else going on, the DNR controls it. We don't have a thing to say about it, as much as we hate it. So lake traffic, our hands are tied. Street traffic, we can handle that at each request of Mr. Click if the zoning is approved. What I would like to do, and it may take a little time, is you have the ordinance in front of you the way the Planning Commission approved it, without the yellow markings in here. Let's discuss each one, because the yellow markings are what Mr. Click would like to see. Yes, the council has the right to change it, but if we go ahead and just do it the way it's here, then we might as well dissolve the Planning Commission and throw them away, because we're basically telling them all the work they did didn't mean nothing.
Sure.
So whether you're for it or against it, I think we did our job as a Planning Commission, and now it's time for us to do our job based on each stipulation, and I'll explain to you why the Planning Commission did what they did, so it's understandable, or at least I hope that you understand where we came from on this. The first thing, you know, we got all the legal description and everything in there and the zoning map. The first thing that was requested by the Planning Commission was that single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, multiple-family dwellings have to be market rate. There's no discrimination or anything like that, because basically when the apartment houses across the street came in and asked for their permit, they said it would be at market rate. So if they can state it, why it can't be stated for this fact, I don't know why. So to me, that stays in. That's the way the Planning Commission voted on it. I don't know what the council feels on that one right now. You know, I'd like to go line item, and get a general consensus, so you at least know if you got questions.
Well, under an R2 residential, which I believe is what the Main Street Apartments is, correct?
Yes.
So does the ordinance governing R2 state market? It does not limit, does it?
No.
But a homeowner who builds or a developer who builds can choose to list it as market. It does not limit them.
Right.
So I think crossing the line of keeping it market rate says that no one who builds in there is not allowed to do anything but market rate, and that is discriminatory.
Well, in my opinion, the market rate part of it is the pure fact that market rate means it complies or at least is compatible to the surrounding area. So it's not going to devalue anyone else's house, because with market rate, are you gonna build a $20,000 tar paper shack and then put it next to somebody's $400,000 house? To me, that makes it more honest. I don't know. Maybe I'm whacked, but
I'm not necessarily stating that allows for low-income housing, because I know that rumor got put out there that that's what it's going to be. It just puts us in a position to defend ourselves if somebody were to build, if it went out of Mr. Click's hands and somebody wanted to put low-income there, the overlay does not allow that to happen. Then we face discrimination by not allowing that. So if we're going to set this commercial overlay, my fear is facing a discriminatory lawsuit down the road. We know that he's not going to put low-income housing. His intent is market rate. That's why it's in there.
okay. Anyone else have any comments on that? Yes,
How would
no?
you classify market rate, single-family dwelling and two-family dwelling? You're saying smaller house than the neighborhood, like a
You know,
development
it's
plan?
kind of, basically, most of this on the zoning, on anything he does, it was also told to the planning commission that an association would, rules and regulations would be in place for the planning commission to do, to see. We haven't seen that, because basically that's not gonna happen until we give him the idea that the zoning's gonna happen. I can't blame him on that.
But that would be addressed in the plating and
But
the
that
stuff for
would
that property at that time, right?
Right. You know, some associations basically say you can't have fake brick on the front of your house. You know, whether or not that falls, but that's something else the planning commission's probably gonna see, or should be seeing. So, that's the reason why the planning commission said to put it in there. The one thing is I'm not the type of person to worry about attorneys and lawsuits, because I look at the common sense factor.
That's where lawsuits come in.
Well, I know, and common sense, I know in society has gone out the window, but
I see that side of things. If it's understood that it's going to be market rate, I don't see, it was merely a protection. If the council, the majority agrees that it should stay as market rate, then it stays at market rate. I'm just voicing my opinion.
I guess I don't think it needs to stay in there personally.
I think by having the homeowners association part of it, I don't think that it would be.
Okay. I'm just explaining why the planning commission did what they did.
I don't see a need for it.
Okay,
So we're striking it.
okay, so it would be struck based on that. Diane, you got any comments? Okay. The next thing was home occupations. The planning commission said no home occupations, contrary to 156.013 of the city code, shall not be allowed. That means if someone buys a house that he has built, they can't have a hair salon in it. They can't have a home office, run a business out of it. Now, that runs into another stipulation there, because now, and that also means the company I work for says you're gonna work from home for a month because of this, this, and this. If I live in that area, I can't do it.
I've worked from home for 8 years. That says my home office paid for by my employer is not allowed.
Right.
that what that's
Up there,
saying?
it would be not allowed.
Can I clarify for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. The planning commission actually said no home occupation shall be allowed. And the concern was that that would eliminate Heidi's example of my home office, and which we do allow under the city code. So then Mr. Click asked me if there was a way to clarify that he still wanted to be able to allow that because of all the teleworking, but that our city code already governs home occupations under section 156.013. So he just wanted to clarify that he would go with the city code and wouldn't allow home occupations contrary to our code. And that's really what it was. So The question is, I don't want to have an auto mechanic shop in my garage on the golf course. That would not be allowed, but yet still allow home telework. And so that was kind of what we were trying to balance there. So rather than the planning commission saying no home occupations, this ordinance says we're not going to allow anything contrary to what our code already allows. And that's kind of how that worked, how that came about, was just the concern that we were the recommendation was to cut off all home occupations. So I don't know if that clarified it all.
And part of the reason why that was brought in by the planning commission is because we do have a couple businesses in town that work out of their home, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, the neighborhood is listening to the car doors slam as those people are going into that business to do what they want to do, and then they come back out. And plus, then the road is plugged by both sides, and it was a way to at least show the neighborhood that we're listening and their concerns are being answered. So that's part of the reason why that was put into place. But, but if city code says that we can control that, then, that's the reason why it was put in there. Because all it does, sometimes businesses just pop up and they didn't get no permit or nothing, and it's just automatically there and nobody says anything, and so.
So to clarify, because I'm seeing this as a double negative, no home occupations contrary to city code shall not be allowed. We're striking that first no, and it should read, home occupations shall not be allowed. Just to clarify that what we're leaving and what we're not.
We're striking no.
We're striking no.
And we're saying that home occupations that are contrary to the code shall not be allowed.
That's how I understood it. Okay, thank you.
And and then that city code could always get changed. Right, Vicki?
Well, the home occupation section of our city code is subject to change.
That's subject to change, yes. Okay. Also, down in, we eliminated a lot of language that was originally presented just because we combined the lot yard area and height requirement setbacks are basically in the city code already, and it was in what the planning commission looked at. So we went through a lot of work on that. So basically in section 6, it's the same as what was in section 5. Commercial uses allowed by the conditional use permit. The planning commission said retail specialty and or gift shop in the existing clubhouse. We did the same with the restaurant, bar, and food service. That's been a restaurant and bar and had food service for years. We didn't see any need to go outside of it. He would like us to strike that part. Meeting rooms, conference rooms, and event venues, we've stated in that it had to be in the existing clubhouse. There's been weddings, class reunions, and everything else up there for years. I don't know what the change would be. So those first three things we can discuss now. If anyone has any comments, speak up. I don't want to be the only one talking on this, but the planning commission did what we could to protect the neighborhood.
This doesn't, okay, does the existing clubhouse, does that mean that he doesn't have the option to expand the clubhouse to meet the needs of the neighborhood if, let's say, he has a dining room that does not even allow for all the neighbors who live on the house to eat at the same time, or on the golf course to eat at the same time? Like, if they wanted to have a neighborhood dinner party, but there's not enough room in the clubhouse, does this language limit him from expanding?
Or renovate?
No. No, that would just be a building permit, and then if he follows, the way it would be is if you needed to add on a room to your house. The only thing is we're not having a separate area for retail. So I said, well, basically everything that's listed here is all stuff that's been going on in the clubhouse for years, just at a smaller scale. The one thing is, we gotta remember, this is strictly for the zoning part. Every
Right.
request from him is going to be scrutinized again from the planning commission and in the council for anything that moves in the future. This isn't open credit card to get anything done up there. There's a lot of hoops and hurdles. We just need to get the language done right. Do we leave it the way the planning commission intended, or do we go with what he requests?
I guess if it doesn't preclude the expansion to the facility, and you can still do those things as far as adding on to the building and still be able to offer those services, I don't know if it has to be struck specifically, unless there's something that I'm not aware of or missing with what could potentially happen there.
One of the things that, from what I understand, is he would look at building a separate place in the middle of the golf course, or close, access to it. I'm not certain how that would all work, but that'd be a request that would come to the planning commission before he'd be able to do it anyway. But for right now, it would, the planning commission just said, no, let's see where this goes before we grant anything more. So you can think about that. We can come back to it. Short-term rental units when greater than 400 feet from perimeter property boundary. The planning commission had stated no rental units. But according to anything residential, if we strike that, no short-term, then if you're residential, you can rent out your house. We can't stop them. But if we leave this in, then we can control it by conditional use permit. Then if we have issues with it, or in the area with it, or anything like that, we can always pull the conditional use permit, and it doesn't happen. So that one there, I personally would say go ahead with the rental units as long as it's under a conditional use permit and it's under a yearly review based on if we have any complaints. But the conditional use permit would then lay out all the details, the garbage, the fencing, anything that has to be done, and then it has to be abided by.
I think the question was 400 feet from perimeter is how the planning commission meant to control that or put some sort of a stipulation on that so that it's not the outward boundary of the golf course that the neighbors had originally complained that they don't want to look out their front or be bothered by an immediate neighbor that's constant in and out traffic.
That, we had eliminated short-term rental
Completely.
This was a request on his part to have it under a conditional use permit. That way the city has control over what's going on up there.
But it's still as long as it's 400
But
feet
it-
from the
but then,
perimeter
yeah.
boundary.
So
I think it's allowable, personally.
I think the city needs to maintain some control on it. Because right now, someone in their house or in your neighborhood or my neighborhood could rent a house and we can't stop them.
Mhm.
We can turn it into an Airbnb or whatever it is, and we can't stop them because it's not there.
But that wouldn't be under the commercial use of this piece. That's a whole different set of what's happening. That would be under somebody having their own home and renting out their own home.
Right.
So, I
But
mean,
it
it's a,
still would be residential.
right, but it's a different conversation than this is.
So
Would that revisiting it, like Ordinance suggested, be applicable to the conditional use permit?
When you would grant the conditional use permit, you can put that condition on it. that it would be revisited.
Yeah.
How does this change? This is changing the R1, R2 use then? Because R1, R2, you can make your house an Airbnb if you want.
Right now, we do not have an ordinance that controls short-term rental.
Correct.
Anybody can do it. If we don't have it in here governing it and managing it by conditional use, then he can just do it. Because we don't have any stipulations on the short-term rental units. I know that cities across the state are grappling with this issue, especially up north in the Lake Country. And so by having it by a conditional use in this ordinance, it gives us some management of it. If we don't have it in here as a conditional use, we revert to the underlying zoning district, which is R1 or R2, where it's allowed.
Okay.
Or permitted. Same as the other ones in town that we have right now that are just allowed.
Any other questions?
I have one. Commercial uses allowed by conditional use permit include, but are not limited to, go down to C, meeting rooms, conference, he takes out rooms, and special event venues, and then he takes out in the existing clubhouse. Does this mean that he might want to have outdoor music like they do at the bars, where we give them permission to have music going till 1 o'clock in the morning? Is this going to be a problem up there?
I don't know what his business plan is for that. The rooms, the conference rooms, I think was that was added simply because it was meeting rooms, conference, and then there was no conference whatever, and then special event venues. It's in the existing clubhouse, same with the two above it that he had requested that be struck, because there could be other places on the golf course where these things might happen in the future, like in the central area of the golf course. And I think that was the situation here, was not that there was any specific types of venues that were planned, but in long-term in the future, in the center of the golf course, it's a very big area that there could be some kind of a venue. And of course, if it's in the center of the golf course, it's not in the clubhouse. And I think that was the concern, was the limitation of in the existing clubhouse, not that there was a specific plan at this point, but that it doesn't shut the door on things that could happen.
And one of the things also is it's by conditional use permit, so it's going to be reviewed by the planning commission and the council before it ever gets to that point.
Okay.
So, I'm trying to keep everyone focused. This is the zoning. Don't try to find a crystal ball and feel in, because that's where we ended up in this situation anyway, with about extra 50 rumors out there and everybody's not getting this straight truth, and we're trying to stay on track, so what's your feelings based on the existing clubhouse on the A, B, and C? Don't speak at once.
Well, for A and B, for sure, as long as it gives the possibility of some sort of expansion, I don't have an issue with in the existing clubhouse staying in.
Okay. Any others? Everyone in agreement? Or
Yeah.
It's not going to prevent him from growing the building.
Right.
To whatever he's cost.
Yeah, I was fine with it, I said.
Okay. On the short-term rental, do you want to leave that in? That way keeps us with the city control with a conditional use permit?
Agreed, personally.
Thought that was, added, that was an addition, so I would say we're fine with adding it.
Okay.
A conditional, or one of the other ideas I had been kicking around was an interim use, but I don't know how well that applies to here. I don't know if you put a date on it and you revisit it after a certain date, but then one of the issues that I kept circling back to was what is the possibility that you could do with them at that time? I don't know. I don't know how messy that would get.
Yeah.
As far as an interim use versus a conditional use?
Yep,
They're essentially the same thing, but an interim use would have a date set, like a deadline date, like the interim use expires on this date, or the interim use expires at which time some event happens. Say that it's allowed until there's a house built within 500 feet, then you can't do it anymore. Or there's a specific event that happens to make it expire, or a date that happens to make it expire.
But you could
So
put-
you have the same thing as a conditional use, you just have an end date. Whereas a conditional use, you have review and revocation, but you don't have a specific end date or an event that causes an end date to happen.
right.
So that's kind of your two options, I guess. It's a little hard to do an interim use when you're physically constructing something, which I'm assuming you would have to do here in order to rent it out.
Right,
And so you build something for a rental, and then with the understanding that in 2 years it's going to expire, it's a little more difficult than just a regular use.
I understand.
Any other comments? Okay. Permitted commercial uses but are not limited to, the planning commission said pro shop with clothing sales in the existing clubhouse. The reason why we went with that was mainly because every golf course has got a pro shop and that's where they sell their clothing. Why it needs to be anywhere else, I have no idea. So that's the reason why the planning commission said it's got to stay in the existing clubhouse. Sports courts, tennis, pickleball, swimming pools. I'm the one that went and said no swimming pools, but, you know, after thinking about it a little more, if he wants one, I don't see why we would stop it if he ends up with a community and association that wants a swimming pool to go with it. Comments on those two things?
I think keeping in the existing clubhouse for pro shop and clothing sales, but allowing swimming pools makes sense. Personally,
Okay, and swimming pools was good to stay in,
I think so.
Yeah, if they're allowed in residential areas, there's
right?
no reason not to
Okay.
have it.
The only other thing, the DNR on the docking system stated that it can only be connected to the shoreline in one spot at the highest point. And that's on recording with the DNR and Sarah on a site visit. So we know that's exactly what they said. There's no changes to that. We also said no boat launch area will be allowed. Basically, he wants to make it no public use boat launch. I don't even want to make it private because no offense to anybody that's got a boat and trailer, but I've seen a lot of people that can't back up. And in the meantime, and that's narrow of a road,
No.
and even if it's a private, they're going to block the road. And I don't want that to happen. So to me, no boat launch area will be allowed.
Yeah.
If it's there, people are going to use it whether it's not to. So I know there's a pad there, but as far as I'm concerned, it gets blocked off and it isn't used. Private or public.
Couldn't he block it off for public use and still utilize it for himself if it's already there and being used for that purpose?
The only thing I can see that he would probably need to use it for is when he's pulling the docks out in the fall. And that's another thing that needs to be added to this. Because even if he has 12 boat slips, I don't want to see the docks piled up between the lake and the road.
Yeah.
I want them on the other side of the road in the parking area that has to happen before he can put the boat slips in. Because anytime you start stacking anything where the wind's gonna blow the snow across, that road's gonna be plugged. Because I've been through that area when the wind is blowing and it gets deep enough without having a dock system that's forming a snow fence. it swirls over the top and it's gonna get deep, and then pretty soon, all of a sudden, when we're plowing snow and we're winging it off, and any one of them docks gets bent, then who's liable for it? So that's one of the things that I wanted added. But what's your opinion on the boat launch area? Planning Commission said no boat launch. And that's kind of where I want to stay.
I feel a boat launch, like was discussed, it welcomes whether it's public or private. People think they can use it because it's there.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Right.
And whether that's people in a boat, people in a vehicle, kids wanting to run down to the lake, it just kind of opens up a whole new can of worms.
Right.
I mean, we
So-
have two already, one on either end. We can, three, yeah, north end too.
Right. So we stay with what the Planning Commission wanted, or do we?
I think that's reasonable. I agree with Heidi. I mean, if it's there, people are gonna,
They're gonna use it,
right,
and who's gonna make sure
right.
that they don't use it?
Yeah.
We can say private, that doesn't mean they're not gonna use it, it's right next to a dock system.
Right.
But if he's got it blocked off
Well-
from anybody else to use it, except when he accesses it based on a secure
And it would-
method, I mean, you're regulating his private property and what he already uses in that manner today.
It depends on how he blocks it. Because you know as well as I do, if you just put a ribbon across it, they're gonna move that. So,
Well, by that same token, I mean, nobody else has boat launches on their property either.
right,
I mean, if you're gonna go down that road, I don't
But
see
it's,
it as.
it's there, that's what I'm getting at.
I
It's not like he's
understand.
constructing a new one.
I get it.
okay, So
I'm just
we-
one opinion, so.
no, that's why we're having the discussion. So is it no boat launch, or? To me, it's gonna create a problem.
Well, to Joe's point, well,
Okay, for right now, we'll just leave it no boat launch, that's what the
I
planning
think leaving it as,
commission said, in my opinion. Parking spaces must be placed, well, there's one parking space for every 3 boat slips. Okay? Parking spaces must be in place prior to the installation of the related docking system. Now, if this is approved, he gets 12 boat slips. But he can't put those 12 boat slips in until that parking area is there. It has to be in, we have to have it made to size, it has to be tarred or whatever, and show where that the runoff's not going into the lake. It's going into his pond. We're gonna protect the lake, and we're also gonna protect the neighborhood. That was part of it. With those 12, if on substantial completion of the twin homes, 1 boat slip per residential unit. Now, it basically means you gotta build the house, you gotta get it sold, then you're gonna add on to the parking thing before you get to put that extra slip in the lake. And that's basically, and that's where single-family home, same with an apartment complex. To get C, you gotta have A and B done, if you don't jump over the top. And that's the reason why the Planning Commission did it that way. It was to protect it. We can change, the 60 boat slip was a suggestion from the DNR. That doesn't mean it has to be 60. We as a council can control, we can limit that. If we decide we want to make it 18, we can. If we want to say the 12 he's got is all he's getting, that it is. He can go 12 right now, and if they're full, And everything else in the project is, he can always request to add more.
It has to be
at the time.
permitted, correct?
But then,
It has to be permitted?
it has to be permitted by the DNR. So he'd ask the permission of the DNR to add onto it, but for right now, we can control it. We can control the amount. Let's prove that you need 60 before it goes to 60. That's the reason why you have to build this and sell them before you can get the additional ones. I don't know, does anybody have an issue with that?
What's the magic number?
I think we start with 12
I
and we limit it to 12.
I think I'm,
Because until an apartment house goes up and before twin homes go up, or, once they start getting in, then we can look at it, or the DNR will look at it. But until that happens, I don't think we need to.
so then would your suggestion be to limit it to the 12? And what about the second part of that, the substantial completion of the twin homes? And the other units, adding one more beyond that? Is that something that would potentially be eliminated as well?
No, that would stay in there, I think, mainly because if he builds a twin home and it's one per boat slip, if he doesn't have it full, he's already gonna have the slips there for them people.
So as it reads, a maximum of 60 boat slips shall be allowed per the following schedule. The suggestion would be eliminating maximum of 60 and just say boat slips shall be allowed per the following schedule upon approval of
Right.
this ordinance 12, and then upon substantial completion of twin homes, one boat slip. So it's only it's adding on one at a time permitted by DNR.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
And for an example, Greystone's got 18 boat slips and there's only 3 that are used by homeowners. Yeah, we're closer to town, but let's prove that you're gonna fill 12 up
That's fine.
before we even go anymore, and then on request, then we go from there. I'm looking at the benefit of the neighborhood at the same time. I'm not trying to handcuff Mr. Click on getting an investment back, a return on his investment.
Well, as I see it, it wasn't initially struck by his request, so it,
Right. It wasn't originally, but that was one of the things.
The way I understand that, though, is, it could still, at least the way you're describing it, it still could get up to that 60 number very easily if they're needed. That doesn't,
Not necessarily. That'd be
All the-
looking in the crystal ball again.
Right.
Nobody's got that crystal ball. It's like, he's got to make a request to the DNR to be able to add on to it. And with this ordinance, the way it's laid out, he's got to prove to us that he needs that extra. And then we'll have some control on how this works. I know it's gray area, it's confusing, but
So is your
So-
suggestion to take out, I want to make sure I understand, take out the maximum of 60 and just start with boat slips shall be allowed per the following schedule?
yes.
So if you do that, don't you technically run into, if he builds an apartment complex with more units, he's allowed one boat slip per unit for all those? That would exceed the maximum if the DNR suddenly decides that 75 is allowed?
right, that's the way I'm understanding what you're saying.
Because we're essentially saying it's up to the DNR's permitting at that point, if we're following that schedule, aren't we? He's got 12 initially, and then every unit he builds, you get a boat slip potentially, shall be allowed. So that's the way we would say it, and the DNR says, oh yeah, that's fine, throw another one out there. Right, if he puts a
He's still got
60
to follow,
unit,
he's still got to follow our ordinance.
but our ordinance would read, if we don't have a maximum, that he gets 12 and then one for every completed unit.
Well, we can change it.
That's
That's
the-
what.
That's
That's where if you just put a maximum in there, you've already got it covered.
60 the maximum, because that seems to be the
Well, that's if we would
number
choose
that
60,
is
or if we
throwing
say it's 30, or if we say it's 48, or, you know,
Yeah, I
that
think
gives
that
him a
the
target
60
that at
number
least he knows what the.
is what I'm asking about, or what I think is being asked about.
And see, I think the whole thing got misconstrued when the DNR even threw that number out,
Yeah.
you know, and it got out. You know, the DNR went and set a number maximum based on the string test from one point to the other point, and it just blew everything out of the water because no one was, that's all they were focused on. They weren't thinking about the zoning. They were trying to look into the future. I wish I had that ability, but I think if we limit it at 12, and they're full, and the apartment house comes into play. The one thing is, you know, we haven't got any, you know, until this is passed. He doesn't, after, if it does get passed, we still gotta have a survey, we still gotta have a plat, we still have to have everything put in place, and everything comes to the planning commission, and it comes to the council for anything to happen. It opens up a whole book on everything else that has to be followed. Just because if this would get passed, doesn't mean that there isn't any more rules or guidelines. The city's got all that in place.
I think if you limit it to 12, which would be the original amount, there's, you know, if he wants to build the townhomes and those things, there's maybe no incentive to develop it beyond the 12 in there either. I mean, if he wants the slips for these residents, that would be coming in there.
But that's his decision.
I think the
I'm aware of
incentive,
that, but
I
I think
think
the city kind of looking for the you know, improvements with the residential and that type of things coming into that property.
Or or the other thing, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, is like, okay, do you want to just limit it to 12 and take the rest of all that language out of it? So then if the apartment house does go up, he doesn't have the ability to add on to it? That's an option too.
That sounds
No,
good.
because I feel like that's still a draw. I mean, I could see 12 people in town wanting to rent those slips up right now. And if 12 people moved into his property and those were all rented, he's got nothing left to offer. I mean, yeah, he could revert it, say they're no longer available, but does 60 seem unreasonable? Yes. Is 18 a less reasonable number? So put this language as 12 and then up to, with one more added, up to 18, then we match what's across the lake, and that has not been, no one's freaking out on that number, so.
It's up to you.
well, and
We all got to vote on it.
one thought process I had earlier as I was looking up some things, I know several cities have, what was the?
A license.
There you go, a business license where people who put in marinas or docking systems like this, where they're renting things out, the business has to have a license similar to how we have for garbage haulers or things like that. So every year annually, it would have to be reapplying. So if there are issues or are things that are going on, there would be some checks and balances that the city would then have to reevaluate things. And you can put in any amount of things into that licensing process. So whether it be environmental things or other types of restrictions within that process. So that would be something. So if we wanted to do right now 12 here, contingent upon evaluating a licensing structure later to be reevaluated, that might be a possible solution.
Within a year,
I mean, yeah, right.
because it's going to take time to get it drawn up, if we would decide to do that.
But then we could reevaluate every year when the license would need to be renewed, how things are going. It would give the neighbors some sense of comfort knowing that we can, take any considerations in mind. And again, if Mr. Click isn't the owner or his family isn't the owner down the road, or if we're not the council down the road, it gives the city some protections as well to know that somebody else isn't going to come along and misuse any of the resources or mismanage things.
True. Okay. What we need to do, on approval, he gets 12 boat slips. Do you want to change it and have a maximum? Put that not 60, but do you want to make it 18, 20?
Leave it at 12.
Or just leave it at 12?
Yeah.
I think it needs to be a little more than
Hmm?
that. I would think it need to be higher than 12.
Well, it's 12 right off the bat.
Well, he gets 12 right away, but as he's
Right.
developing, he's gotta, kind
Yeah.
of know what's maybe
Right.
allowed as he puts those units in. If it's residential, do you want to strike it out of the apartment complex? It's got to be the residential development for those folks that build homes and want to have lots. I think there needs to be an idea of what's there.
Have you got a number?
I don't know, you go 12 and you got, potential 24 unit twin homes he's proposing. Do you go 36? Do you say, okay, not everyone's gonna get, do you go 30? Do you go 24? I still think there's gotta be a number there.
I think leave it at 12 and let him fight with the DNR if he wants to expand it.
We'd have to fight with us.
Yeah,
because we cap
yeah,
it at
that's the
12.
thing. If we're limiting it, we're limiting it, so.
Yeah, then it would come back to us.
I feel like, Joe, you made a good point. 36 seems like an awful long reach right now. 60 is even worse, but 36 is still even a reach to put 12 in now, and there still has to be homes constructed to fill those slips.
Right. Because until those 12 are filled, there's no request for more.
What? He's got homes built and the 12s aren't filled. He can add more if he'd want.
He can,
Well, we can
Ordinance
change.
reads-
he can build, he can add more slips upon the completion of twin home builds. I'm losing what you're saying. If he doesn't fill those 12, well,
Well,
it
he's
doesn't
still
matter
got
if he fills
slips
those
open. It
12s.
doesn't make any difference if
Sure.
he doesn't.
So you're saying if he doesn't need to build
He
them,
doesn't need to add on. But the other thing that the planning commission also, and I think it's in here, I can't locate it right now, but if he does request to add on to that more, like I said, twin home's gotta be built. It's gotta be somebody in it. Then he can add on to the slip, but he also has to add on to the parking lot before they can add on to the slip.
yeah.
Because you're gonna have people, all of a sudden you go from 12 slips and you got 4 parking spots down there. Now he makes it 24, just to throw a number out. Then he should have 8 parking spots.
Correct, and that's
And
in the ordinance.
Right. So basically, it goes back to, you have to do A to get B, and you gotta do both A and B to get C. And C is the slips. So,
But because we know even 60 isn't going to happen tomorrow, 36 is still a hard reach.
right,
I feel comfortable with 36, which gives him wiggle room over a length of time to still build what could potentially be there. 12 is down at the park on a given day. Could be.
could be. I'm leaning more with the 12 would start and no more than 24,
So maximum of 24 is what you're saying.
maximum of 24.
I'm okay
That
with
in the
24.
future, he wants to come back to us and stuff, that's a request that we
Yeah,
would address
that's
at
a
that time.
request, by that, hopefully in a year, he's got those 12 filled. But
Well, and he's got homes constructed.
he's got a whole lot of other stuff that's got to fall into place before that can happen.
I'm good with
24
24.
maximum?
Is that,
If it turns into a big issue, I think the DNR is going to step in because it's in the lake.
I don't like,
That's one of the things too, you know, that I've learned over the years just hunting and fishing. I can walk all the way around Sauk Lake on the shoreline. As long as I stay in the water, I'm not trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like voting on something and not really having recourse, or not allowing the city to have the recourse to do much. But that's why, like I said, if there was any way of putting that licensing
No, we can add that.
aspect of it, or some sort of conditioning on looking at that licensing structure.
We
I
can
think
add that.
I think that would give some type of protection. Just,
We can add that in.
I think that would make me feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, we can always make it as section 12, or it's probably going to have to get rewrote.
I think what he's suggesting that we create a licensing ordinance and make it retroactively effective to this project as well as any future projects.
I think so.
Right,
Okay.
okay. So that would be added in. I'm not sure where the numbering would be on it, but the licensing would go into place on here. And then did we say 24 maximum?
I was comfortable with 24. Joel?
Okay, Joe,
Yeah, comfortable
Diane,
24. I don't know.
24.
I still like 12.
Well, it's 12 for now,
Yeah.
but he's got to, he's got to meet all the other criteria to get to that 24. That's where the planning commission did their homework
Yeah.
when they came in on this, so. Anything else? Well, and the storage of the docks needs to be done on the
Well, I think,
golf course
well,
side.
with some of those things, those type of things could be, well, never mind. That's fine, yeah, the storage.
Yeah, it's all part of the zoning ordinance.
Right.
That the storage of the docks has to be done on the parking lot side of the lake, or the golf course side, not in between the lake and the road. And it doesn't have anything to do with this zoning
Right.
thing, but as of right now, is more than likely what's gonna end up happening is the city's gonna put no parking signs on both sides. No parking on that whole strip on either side of the road. So that can't get clogged up. That's but that's an agenda item that we can do later on the council agenda. So, is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss? This has to pass by a 4/5 vote if it's going to pass. So, Vicky, can you were taking notes, I was too, but I'm not certain I got them all. You want to recap kind of the changes that they went through now?
Okay, so the changes from the planning commission meeting, and then the request, I'm just going to go to section 4, A, B, and C, where it said market rate, and then it was requested to be removed. I understand you want to leave that in, market rate? Or
no,
did
we're
I
gonna
have
leave it
strike?
out.
See, that's my question. I have it both written down.
I think that was
We're gonna leave it
going to
out.
be
Removed.
Removed, okay. I have strike written down, but it wasn't crossed. Okay,
Yeah.
so then on section 5, we were going to be okay with saying home occupations contrary to that shall not be allowed. Same with section 6, the same thing there.
right.
We get to commercial uses allowed by conditional use permit. We did leave in the existing clubhouse in those items. And we also we did allow the short-term rentals when greater than 400 feet from the perimeter property boundary, they would be by conditional use permit. And those would be yearly reviewed, which would be part of the conditional use permit process. On permitted commercial uses, pro shop with clothing, we left in the existing clubhouse in there.
Yeah.
Sports, tennis, pickleball, we allowed swimming pools to be included.
Yeah,
You took out the boat launch, saying
Yeah.
no boat launch shall be allowed.
right.
So does that mean we're requesting or demanding the existing one be removed? Or I just need that clarified.
I wouldn't,
I don't think we need to have him remove it, but it definitely has to be blocked off so nobody can use it.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then we had on off-season dock storage will not be allowed on the lake lot.
Right,
Well, that would be added in there. We're going to have a maximum of 24 boat slips. And we're going to make this boat slip system or dock subject to license approval.
Mhm.
And I think that would be all of them. The changes are the,
Anything else? Council have any questions?
license approval, and we'll come up with some sort of a policy at a future time, right? That'll cover that license approval or something?
right, and
Yeah.
we would make that license approval ordinance that would come before at another date.
Right,
I think you gave us some pretty good examples that you had found.
right.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I don't know, I'm still kind of hung up on that 25. I know that that's kind of a halfway, but, and I know Diane was back at the 12 on the boat slips, but
I know the 12 is allowed right now.
right.
The 24 is based on the following schedule.
That was the first thing that honestly made me kind of jump back when I looked at everything too, is the number that was in there, and I don't know.
The way I look at it is if the 24 boat slips are allowed, if he needs them, by that time, we're gonna see what the development all is about. If there's actual need for it.
But then, so my question then, should that language be reflected in there somewhere? Like if there's a need or anything like that, is that hard to demonstrate? Or would there just be 25 of them, or how, is that what?
No, 24 is
20, sorry,
maximum.
24, would be 24 of them up with or without need. I mean, that's something that's hard to quantify, is what the need is and what the need isn't, you know what I mean? I feel like that's a open-ended proposition for.
True.
And then it's also, in my opinion, it's hard to tie it back to, even though the putting of them there is tied to a home unit, to me, it's not necessarily reserved specifically for the person in the home or the apartment. I mean, it could be potentially rented out to anyone. You know, it's not as though that person living in that home has that boat slip. So, I mean, that could be a influx of.
Okay, does everybody understand kind of what he's getting at?
Yes.
It's that,
Not that there's, and again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, if it's the idea that somebody's living there and having a boat dock on the lake, that seems reasonable to me. But if it's the idea that somebody has a home and there's a boat dock for them that's being rented out to somebody else, that kind of stretches it for me a little bit.
So I think it would still demonstrate there's a need if it's filled up to that that capacity level. Additionally, if, you're a non-lakeshore owner within the community and you want to have access to park your boat and stuff, I don't know that that's something we need to say it has to be a homeowner on.
And it's a hard, like I said, there's, one of the things I've discovered is there's a lot of nuance in this conversation, and there's a lot of gray area, so it's a tough conversation.
Can't that be part of the licensing discussion, though?
I guess there could be, yeah.
right, that could be part of the licensing thing when we get to that, discuss it. And I can see, the more I think about it, the more that you brought up a good point is, okay, you build a single-family home, that home gets one slip. Well, they don't have a boat. Is he going to say, well, that's reserved for whenever that person gets it and it sits open the whole time?
Which doesn't make.
Which doesn't make sense.
Right.
and he can still ask for an increase to the maximum with them still sitting empty.
Right.
And that's where I think, yeah, the proof of need or whatever. But yet, are you going to spend the money to add on to a boat slip dock when you don't
Exactly.
have anybody? So that's an investment.
Or to Heidi's point, rent it out to somebody in town or
Right.
somewhere else. I mean, that's a,
Yeah. So I think that's something that actually is gonna fall into his lap more than it is us on how he does it, because to go over the 12, he's gonna have to come to us and prove the need to go over it. You know, based on that schedule. If you come, you know, if he does 3 twin homes and he says, I need 6 more slips,
but I guess that's why I was asking the question was, are we saying you get the 12 and then you have to come back to council to get approved for the other 12?
because that's where that schedule comes in.
The way I was interpreting what you were saying was, and I'm sorry that I'm laboring on this point, the way I was interpreting it was the rest of the schedule is completing the homes. I guess I would feel a little bit more comfortable if it was you get the 12 and then assuming that you can demonstrate some sort of a need and come back and get approval for the others, that would make me a little bit more comfortable rather than,
Okay.
and maybe I'm just being overly cautious, but I don't know.
I think that I didn't understand that he would have to come back again to us to get more because those are allowed as part of the plating process. I'm gonna come in and get a plat and approve 6 more houses. And because now I've platted those 6 houses, once they're constructed, now I can have are you proposing a 2-step, like you plat and are part of the plating process, you're gonna be eligible to get 6 more docks?
I don't know.
I also have to come back here and get a permit for 6 more? I just wanna make sure that I understand, because I didn't understand it that way at the planning commission.
Right, I was just trying to understand too what Warren was asking, or.
Is it gonna be a 2-step process then, that here it says you can have them when you plat, or when you build new homes?
Once you
I'm
build
building
them and
new
have
homes,
someone in
then I gotta
them,
come
then
back
you
here
can,
and also request the permit to expand my docks in addition to the plat
Right.
and the houses?
I think-
So we make sure we understand it.
basically it's, yeah, you're gonna you build the houses, you get them sold, someone's living in there, you add on to the parking lot, then you can get your extra slips. You're not gonna get those extra
You
slips.
can get them,
beforehand.
or you have to come here and get approval?
You have to come and prove that you got and make sure. You just can't stick them in and you gotta come to us.
Doesn't this always already establish that by the construction of the twin
Yeah.
home and
That's the
the
verbiage
parking
that
lot
we have.
addition? I mean,
True,
it's already in there.
okay. But if half of them were open,
But again, if you, as a business person, if there's not a need for it,
right,
you're not gonna spend the money on, just throwing them out there just to sit empty.
right,
I mean, he could have all these homes built and still sit at 12 because it doesn't make sense to purchase
right,
the other 12 because nobody's using them.
right. So. You want that?
No, I'm fine.
That
I think
language is
it's
fine.
Yeah, I think it's covered. So, well, if there's no more discussion, do I have a motion either way to approve or deny ordinance 803 with the changes that we made?
I will make the motion to approve the ordinance with the changes proposed by the council.
Okay? I
I'll
have a
second.
Motion by Joe, second by Heidi to approve with the changes. Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me.
Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against. Motion carries. Thank you. Action 7F, approve resolution 2021-60 calling hearing
The attached resolution calls for a public hearing on the creation of tax increment district financing 1-15. At the hearing, the council may approve the creation of an economic development district in the new Aerosmith Plat 3 to capture the increment generated to reimburse land and land improvement costs for a new business. Although this business is retail, it qualifies due to the city's small business program. This resolution 21-60 calls for a public hearing to be held on September 1st.
Okay. Everyone knows where that tax increment district is?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments on it?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve Resolution 2021-60 by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Stearns Prosecution Contract, 7G.
Janelle Kendall, Stearns County Attorney, has presented the city with the 2022-2023 criminal prosecution contract, which is an extension of the existing contract. Stearns County handles the prosecutions for the police department. A flat rate of $31,500 per year is proposed. Stearns County prosecutes misdemeanor and petty misdemeanor violations of state statute. They also provide victim and witness assistance, civil asset forfeiture, appellate representation, law enforcement training, and 24/7 availability for law enforcement questions. What we're requesting tonight is to authorize execution of the 2022-2023 criminal prosecution contract with Stearns County Attorney's Office.
Okay. You all have the letter from Janelle and the contract in front of you. This is something that we do on a regular basis with them every 2 years. Is there any discussion or questions?
Is this up from previous budget, or is this the same?
It's up $500.
5.
Any other questions? Call the Do we have a motion to authorize execution of the 2022-2023 criminal prosecution contract?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shellen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. That brings us to our consent agenda. We'll have schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $158,682.37, paid claims of $150 for a total of $158,832.37. We have resolution number 21-61, accepting contributions of $135.75 from the men's card playing group to be allocated to the senior center. And on behalf of the city and the council, I wanted to thank that group for their contribution. Is there any questions about the consent calendar? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no informational items. This brings us to our closed meeting. So we will empty the council chambers and we will go into, we will recess a regular meeting. We'll reconvene our regular council meeting in closed session. We instructed staff to go ahead with 2 letters of intent for purchase for 2 real estate parcels. With that, we have reached the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Heidi.
Second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.